Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot and very happy to be here today. So I have a targeted individual with me. His name is Timothy Darrell Young, and we're going to be talking about the whole idea and situation around targeted individuals. I think that there are a lot of people that are being targeted, a lot of experimentation taking place on humans around the planet, but especially by the Air Force, apparently. And that's information that comes through Richard Lighthouse, who I've done a few interviews with and recommend his interviews for more background. I've also interviewed a number of targeted individuals. So, Timothy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself and everyone who's watching this. I do have a page on my website devoted to Timothy, so we have links to his website and his Facebook as well. So you can go there if you want more information after the interview or even during it. And so Timothy, could you introduce yourself and how you got into the position you're in right now?
Sure. I am a third-generation Oregonian and former student leader. In the late 90s, I served as student body president at Portland State University. In 2000, I was appointed to the Oregon State Board of Higher Education under then-Governor Kitzhaber, which I served on for 3 years as a student representative on a board in charge of all 7 of our public universities. I was a higher ed finance whistleblower, academic governance dissident, and grew up in K-12 and was in talented and gifted special education in my youth. I finished my master's degree in 2005, and I began to know that I was contract stalked and electronically assaulted, remote control tortured, as soon as 2005, after I was finished my tenure as a state government official for the state of Oregon. I am a non-consensual synthetic telepath victim of menticide, total individual control technology, cybernetic weaponized neuropsychology mind control, and myself and approximately 1.5 million Americans are targeted. Those numbers taken from a gentleman who was working for Blackwater, a mercenary organization doing the remote control torture. My understanding from reading from Robert Duncan on Project Soulcatcher, Volume 2, Secrets of Cyber and Cybernetic Warfare revealed the U.S. 11 years ago had capacity for 30 million minds mapped worldwide, that is, targeted individuals able to be induced remote control into symptoms of psychosis and schizophrenia, augmented reality. I agree with Robert Duncan that the technology is worse than nuclear weapons, less merciful, more horrible qualitatively and quantitatively. It's worse than getting shot. And it's done in a public and private partnership for organized torture. In a presentation by Dr. Daniel Leibowitz, MD, submitted to the Senate in the United States, December 9th, 2014, he talks about a quote from Jose Delgado, the scientist who stopped a charging bull by remote control. Dr. Jose Delgado's secret work in Project Pandora was directed toward the creation of a psycho-civilized society. In his paper, Intracerebral Radio Stimulation and Recording in Completely Free Patents Using Radio Waves, Delgado observed that radio stimulation on different points of the amygdala and hippocampus in 4 patients produced a variety of effects, including pleasant sensation, elation, deep thought concentration, odd feeling, super relaxation, colored visions or hallucinations, and other responses. Speaking in 1966, Delgado asserted that his research supported the distasteful conclusion that motion, emotion, and behavior can be directed by electrical forces and that humans can be controlled like robots by push buttons. Delgado stated that electromagnetic weaponry were more dangerous than atomic destruction. With knowledge of the brain, we may transform, we may shape, direct, we may roboticize man. I think the greatest danger of the future is that we will have a roboticized human beings who are not aware they've been roboticized. He, in fact, did create a brain transponder that was, in fact, used to roboticize humans. And secondly, I want to read from A quote from the United States Air Force Scientific Advisory Board, New World Vistas, Air and Space Power for the 21st Century. This comes from Dr. Nick Begich's book, Controlling the Human Mind, the Technologies of Political Control or Tools for Peak Performance. Quote, one can envision the development of electromagnetic energy sources, the output of which can be pulsed, shaped, and focused, that can couple with the human body in a fashion that will allow one to prevent voluntary muscle movements, control emotions and thus actions, produce sleep, transmit suggestions, interfere with both short-term and long-term memory, produce an experience set, and delete an experience set. It would also appear possible to create high-fidelity speech in the human body, raising the possibility of covert suggestion and psychological direction. Thus, it may be possible to talk to selected adversaries in a fashion that would be most disturbing to them. I have done some research on the public and private partnerships that have given rise to these organized torture groups through reading a book called Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control by Dr. John Hall, who's an MD out of Texas. There is from 2019 a bill in the state of California called the Organized Torture Act, which is available off one of my TI websites. If you just type in Tim Young, Blue Oregon, you should be able to see the PDF of the text. I would like that to be used as a guide for lawmaking in my state of Oregon to dismantle these small business models for rape, pillage, and plundering the United States. I would also like to outlaw direct energy and sound weaponry, similar to what was done in Michigan, but more robust. From Dr. Nick Begich's books, there's references of in 1997, the year I graduated high school, there were already 40 U.S. patents to put voices in people's heads with electronics. Similar to what was done in Texas, but hopefully more robust. I would also like state lawmakers and my to update stalking laws to include, for example, remote control drones and other high-tech ways of surveying and abusing citizens. Recently, the White House took a position on being interested in these drones and how they're being used to abuse citizens and our constitutional rights. I have read through the Havana Syndrome Act, which many TI have been aware of recently. It doesn't do enough to insulate other parts of the government, rather than just federal, from these weapons. I was a state government official in Oregon, and I got hit and have been tortured ever since. It seems from the legislation as it was passed, CIA employees and federal government employees can receive compensation, and that anything law enforcement is exempted. It allows the FBI, the corrupt members of the FBI, not all the FBI is corrupt, to continue to use these microwave weapons and these gang stalkers. Richard Lighthouse says the CIA is in charge of the microwave torture program and the FBI supplies the gang stalkers. That's exempt from my reading of the Havana Syndrome Act. TIs and their families, unless Congress votes to allow for compensation, damages are capped at $100,000. And that comes from Robert Duncan's book, Project Soul Catcher, Volume 2. My ideas for shielding, I want to talk to the audience that may suspect they are TI. If you hear voices and antipsychotics don't stop voices for you, you are in the third of patients that hear voices that antipsychotics don't work for. And there is a strong likelihood that you're being remote control tortured, electromagnetic abused, disguised as mental illness. There is a sound therapy called hemi-sync, like hemispheric synchronicity of the different two hemispheres of your brain, or binaural beats therapy, which is sound therapy that can help change your EEG, which is a good way to defend yourself against attacks from these remote control tortures, efforts to manipulate your brain to impact your emotions, efforts to agitate you in remote torture ways. Hemi-sync sound therapy can be helpful. Electromagnetism is known to bounce off water and salt water, and getting behind salt water somehow, or even a water pillow, may be a way to disrupt some of the attacks on you from beyond the visible section of the electromagnetic bandwidth. Faraday cages and copper-infused clothing. The copper-infused clothing marketed on television to the elder class among us in the United States can be used for any age TI that's getting abused with remote-controlled torture. I have a copper Tommy Boy copper top T-shirt with long sleeves that cost me about $100, and I've fashioned a copper-infused lightweight cap from some COVID-19 masks that they were selling. Also, I just had it sewn up to be a cap. I use less pain reliever with this copper-infused clothing, and it helps me control my electrical system as a human being in a better, much needed way. I recommend dialectical.
Excuse me. Okay, so the trouble with the mask is that it's been proven to have graphene oxide in it. Anything to do with masks is very, very bad for you, much worse than what you're trying to prevent. So I would suggest not ever using a mask of any kind, but especially not any masks sold in a store or associated with a medical organization. So just saying. Now, I appreciate all the information you just laid out. I think that's very good and helpful for people that might be targeted. I want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, you are in a kind of a hospital. Is that associated with your being targeted, or is that a different matter?
No, that is associated with me being targeted. Control torture gangs through trauma-based mind control, manipulation, including street theater, indetectable break-ins, and and torture can trick people into crimes that they normally never would commit. I am at the Oregon State Hospital in Junction City in a rehabilitative capacity, not punitive, having pled guilty, but for reason of insanity, for a drunken stupor. I had fallen off the wagon on quitting alcohol. I killed a 17-year-old dog that looked like it was talking and was part of the torture that had been abusing me since the early 90s. I know the dog wasn't talking. The lobes of my brain associated with sight in the back of my head and on the side of my head for advanced sight and hearing were being deceived directly with remote-controlled torture techniques. So that's why I'm here at the Oregon State Hospital. I've been recuperating for 2.5 years of about a 5-year sentence under the Psychiatric Review Board. And I've benefited greatly. My health has improved. I've met many other targeted individuals that are in the facility too, that are witting or otherwise know that they're targeted. There's many more that don't know that they're targeted and only think it's mental illness why these things are happening to them. It was a regretful day. It was really out of character for me and more of a cry for help. And my friend, whose dog it was, a 17-year-old dog, I apologized to him and tried to make amends. So that's why I'm here at the Oregon State Hospital. I was tricked into killing a talking dog that really wasn't talking.
I see. Okay. So at what, you've been mentioning ways to sort of, I guess, dampen down the effects, et cetera, et cetera. It would sound that some of these things weren't working for you. How do you sort of explain that?
Oh, yeah, like I made a Faraday cage that wasn't as successful as I thought it would. That's something that comes up in some of the recommendations. There is a way of making a heat induction coil that I learned from a German citizen who's being targeted by their Secret Service that creates a bright light beyond the visible spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum that makes it harder for you to get targeted. He keeps his heat induction coil running in his apartment during the day when he's working, and he seems to find some relief from remote-controlled torture. And the water, electromagnetism bouncing off water, that has been confirmed by some other sources that I've read about and has been helpful. The hemisync sound therapy is helpful. Medications to help with agitation and anxiety are helpful. And the water pillow idea, I have yet to try, but look forward to trying that.
Okay, and what about CBD?
Oh yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's based somewhat in Buddhism, but don't be frightened from it if that is something you're not familiar with. Came out of the University of Washington, and it is a way for individuals to help cope with stress, maintain healthy and positive relations, manage tension, interact effectively with people, and techniques for handling stress.
Okay, I think maybe, I'm not sure whether you didn't understand what I was saying. I was talking about CBD oil.
Oh, geez, I thought dialectical behavioral therapy. I said DBT. I would imagine that that's helpful and useful. And
you would imagine, but you've never tried it.
No, but I was in my private life legal pot smoker myself, and found it. I used to call it a poor man's way to meditate. A very helpful and enduring the stress of Chatterbot or Chatterbox, as it's called, the AI software that's used to remote control torture our audio cortexes and audio lobes directly. Yep, marijuana was helpful in mitigating pain.
Well, I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking specifically about CBD oil.
Okay, I have yet to try it myself.
Okay, that was what I was asking. Okay. And what about C60? You familiar with that?
I am not.
Okay. All right. So you seem to be very well read and knowledgeable about all of this. Did you look into, let's see, Richard Lighthouse's work?
Yes, that's where I was able to get Dr. Jose Delgado quote, which is one of the most terrifying statements I've ever heard in my life, is because it's been achieved. That's what we have. We have a roboticized human population that doesn't know that they've been roboticized.
Well, definitely.
I found his research and writing very helpful, and understanding more of the particulars with the terrorist watch lists that are fraudulent, and people like myself, who was a student leader, political dissident, pissed off about the tuition, being treated as a terrorist, falsified information about me around the clock. They even, this perpetrator gang that's torturing me, even falsified a background check, a criminal background check, that I didn't have a criminal background prior, and the individual is born in a different decade, has tattoos, he's 6'1", I'm like 5'10", no tattoos, and had a rap sheet that was like 6 pages long, just ridiculous. Criminal. That has been attributed to my identity now for more years than I've been aware of. I'm trying to get it cleared up with the FBI right now in a identity history summary challenge. But it was done very much purposefully and out of malice, as other TIs can identify with, techniques of modifying our medical records, arrest records, even academic records. It's such a problem. Criminalizing the acts is a part of the California Organized Torture Act of 2019. It happens so often that it's part of the bill. Okay,
so now I wonder, there's a couple things I'm wondering about. One is, have you ever considered moving out of the area or out of the state altogether?
Yeah, and I've tried that. Some of the better advice from TIs is stay where you have some kind of infrastructure and support. I'm an Oregonian, third generation. I bounced around the state of Washington, California, Nevada, and Utah, and was psychologically operationed on the whole time. Hologram form perpetrators traumatizing me, and I would say that the advice that I read about staying where you have a support network, where you grew up, is probably your best tactic for success.
Okay. And let's see, another question. Okay, so in your situation, do you understand why specifically they target you and continue to target you? Do you kind of understand that, or do you not know why?
Yeah, and I want to speak to that specifically and cite some reference here. So I am in Junction City right now, which is in Lane County, and Lane County in Oregon is where the University of Oregon is, and I was a student there 2000 through 2005. In this book, Earth Rising, the Revolution Towards 1,000 Years of Peace by Dr. Nick Begich and James Roderick, on page 83, it states, quote, "Mystery high-frequency radio impulses have been bombarding the Eugene Springfield area for as long as 6 years and may be affecting people's health. The paper said that the source of the signal is unknown. They say it is being broadcast at 4.75 megahertz and is pulsating at about 1.1 times per second. The mechanisms for understanding the effect of these energies is being recorded in several diverse laboratories with mounting evidence of the proofs open science requires. One of the observations shows that at the core, observed sensitivities to low-level EMF fields are a series of cooperative processes. One such series involves calcium ion binding and release. Available evidence points to their occurrence at cell membranes and on cell surfaces, and the essential first step of detecting EMF fields." And the article goes on. That was cited by the Columbia Record in South Carolina, March 27, 1978. The article was entitled "Mysterious Radio Signals May Be Harming
As
Health."
terrorists that falsified information about me around the clock. They even, this perpetrator gang that's torturing me, falsified a background check, a criminal background check, that I didn't have a criminal background prior, and the individual is born in a different decade.
We're getting, hello?
Tattoos, he's 6'1".
Yeah, that's old. Hi.
Wait, hold on. Timothy?
Yes.
Okay, it looks like it's gone now. All right, let's start again or resume the show.
Sure.
So, hold on a second. I have to make sure we're still recording. Yes, recording here, and I guess we're still live. Hold on, I'm just double checking this. One moment. Okay, yes. All right, so not sure what happened there. Seemed like somebody jumped into the call. Anyway, so Timothy, what are you saying? That was you? It sounded like your voice, and then you were reading something or whatever?
It was a tactic, it looks like, from taking audio from previous in the interview and then replaying it over, you and I continuing on the interview at a key point and discussing information. I'll read it again. From Earth Rising, the Revolution Toward 1,000 Years of Peace by Dr. Nick Begich and James Roderick, on page 83, quote, it states, "Mystery high-frequency radio impulses have been bombarding the Eugene Springfield area for as long as 6 years and may be affecting people's health. The paper said the source of the signal is unknown. They say it is being broadcast at 4.75 megahertz and is pulsating at 1.1 times per second. The mechanisms for understanding the effect of these energies is being recorded in several diverse laboratories with the mounting evidence of the proofs open science requires," and it goes on to detail some of what was going on. That citation is from an article called "Mysterious Radio Signals May Be Harming Health" from the Columbia Record of South Carolina, March 27th, 1978. In 2000 through 2005, 2004, most precisely, I started getting hit with advanced electromagnetic form sound weapons and direct energy weapons in the same county as that article referenced it happening in 1978 and 6 years prior to 1978. I talked to a client here at the state hospital who's also done research, and people back then were taking their own lives to get away from the sound weapon and the electromagnetic weaponry. I have some other citations about this activity and being a student leader. This is from Controlling the Human Mind by Dr. Nick Begich, page 100. In 1975, the Congress authorized the Rockefeller Commission to conduct a full investigation of what the Central Intelligence Agency was doing in the United States. At the conclusion of the investigation, they published a report on the activities of the CIA within the United States. The Central Intelligence Agency was supposed to be only dealing with things outside of the United States, not within the boundaries. In the 1960s, the CIA, according to the report, was infiltrating student and other groups objecting to U.S. policies at the time. They were reported to be involved in surveillance of everyone from the Congress all the way through activist organizations and individuals throughout the United States, and they were using unwitting test subjects for mind control experiments. It goes on page 101. The president was reported to have admitted authorizing the National Security Agency to conduct eavesdropping without court orders, using fear of terrorism as the excuse. The secret executive order was authorized and reviewed every 45 days, with the second Bush reauthorizing this illegal activity 30 times. That's cited from the New York Times. Bush admits he ordered domestic spying program by David Sanger, reprinted in the Anchorage Daily News, December 18th, 2005. So why I was targeted is wrapped up in some of this evidence from some of these other books. I was a student leader in a blue state. The domestic false flag psychological operation of September the 11th was perpetrated, and I represented a dissenting opinion about war in the Middle East, and had my life destroyed at the speed of subconscious thought ever since. It made a slave worse than just economic slavery. These remote control torture gangs and their AI chatterbot can control my body parts slightly, my genitals, emotions. I'm subjected to synthetic dreams at night, and all kinds of other torture, other TI experience also.
Okay, sorry about that. Having some trouble with just this equipment here. Okay, so in terms of your life and going forward, do you feel that are you like incapacitated by this? Or are you able to operate?
I'm legally disabled. The remote control torture manifests as psychosis or schizophrenia and works to fit that definition. I've been on SSI for a number of years. My lifetime goal in trying to figure out financial solutions for the Oregon University system culminated in a ballot measure that would have made an endowment for $6 billion modeled after the Georgia Hope Scholarship Program under, at the time, the State Treasurer, Ted Wheeler. I advised his campaign on creating this endowment that the interest generated off of it would fund grants for community college, university tuition, and vocational programs. And unfortunately, it was designed to fail and was not achieved. That lifelong goal of working on higher ed finance issues to help students pay for school, I made no illusions about. I was very clear about what I wanted to do with my my career. I was restricted to being at my home doing a lot of writing over the internet towards those goals, and was unsuccessful.
Okay, but
I was able to manage, but I'm still legally disabled.
Okay, but sorry, why wouldn't you be working in this area of, raising awareness and become a speaker, for example, on the circuit with regard to this subject that seems to affect you in your life so completely?
I am making a modest effort after decades of research, and it's going forward now. The areas of policy improvement and making, I have in communication with an old friend of mine from college who is now serving in the Oregon State Legislature. I've talked with some individuals from the legal community. It's frightening to people want to, when they hear about this, I had watched and read a lot of your efforts over the last 2 decades. And this is kind of like my maiden voyage, so to say, in anything national about the remote control torture epidemic. I've done some interviews with a guy named Kevin Christian, a Georgia targeted individual who's taken great risks with his life and quality of life. He confirms it's worse than getting shot, what's done to us. And he was able to tell me of an experiment that I was able to recreate. The electro frequency broadcast can be seen off of reflective surfaces. I was able to see my broadcast off of reflective surfaces after he had said on his YouTube channel that that was possible. I was able to recreate the experiment. And I would like to move to my state's capital, Salem, and spend the rest of my days going around in the state legislature talking to legislators about how we need to stand up to the federal government and a wildfire of unchecked powers that have AI in the position of false deity, a coup, an enslavement, and a population that is roboticized, that doesn't know it's roboticized already. It will be difficult. I expect to fail. But I really want to do what I can to stick up for human rights, human dignity.
Well, yeah, it would seem logical that you would do that. Now, I am wondering if you're aware of how the use of crystals can protect you from some of these effects as well, or these targets, and targeting, electromagnetic, frequencies, as well as scalar waves, etc. And there's also scalar wave meditation, which is basically activating Kundalini or Chi. Some people call it Chi, other people call it Orgone in the West, more in Europe. So there's that, and there's also, so I'm just trying to find out, are you aware that you can use crystals and also orgone type, I don't know what you call them. I have a friend who makes pyramids and various things. She made a plate, and these things can also change the frequencies around you. Orgone, physical orgone. It's really resin combined with crystals and various other, metals and so on. Are you familiar with those things?
I think many years ago, like over 10 years ago, I bought an organ device, and the remote EEG transducer technology that's used on me was still used on me. I did not find relief from that, unfortunately.
Okay, well, what I'm talking about is, because I get targeted from time to time, and I can tell very aware of the electromagnetics around me, etc. And I find these things work really well, but you have to have high quality, and you probably need fairly large. It doesn't have to be gigantic or anything, but at least, not just tiny crystals, but larger ones can help. And another thing that I've also discovered is silk. Are you familiar with, and that's real silk? That real silk does seem to protect against certain frequencies.
I haven't heard about that. I did recently read people having some success with leather, like nicely put together leather.
That's possible. Anything to do, organic or having to do with the earth. Also getting grounded, of course, going barefoot in nature, that sort of thing. Spending time on the beach. That's probably the best energetics you can get. So that's highly recommended as well. And simply learning meditation and activating Kundalini, because that will help protect your body and help change the frequencies around you such that you can also return the favor. In other words, you can actually, humans generate scalar waves. I don't know if you're familiar with my interviews with Duncan O'Finian, in which he and a group of children, when he was quite young, were sent to, I think it was Laos or Cambodia, and they were given a task by the military to join hands and basically decimated a village by sending chi out, scalar waves, and you know, killed all of the inhabitants. So obviously not recommended to do something that disastrous, but these are the kinds of possibilities that humans have in their frequency. So if a person is having this sort of thing, you are talking about targeting, but you're also talking about some kind of relationship between you and the people targeting you. And that may go back karmically. I'm just throwing these things out. And that you also could, in other words, life doesn't just happen by, not sporadically, not accidentally. And so you kind of tend to attract what you want to learn about and also become an expert in. And so in your case, that would be this subject, and that you can rise to a higher level with it, and in essence, transcend it by learning enough that you also change yourself physiologically. But if you're dependent on any kind of medication, if you follow any kind of traditional medical procedures, etc., that these will block the things I'm talking about. So they tend to act the opposite and will be a problem with healing and so on and so forth. So just throwing that out. Have you had any interactions with military people or people that, like, I don't know what you might call them in your case, but maybe whistleblower kinds of people that tell you why you were chosen, how you were chosen, how they keep it up at this point, and try to also track down the source?
It's through researching Renee Pittman's Diary of an Angry Targeted Individual. She talked about stationary and mobile direct energy weapon and sound weapon delivery systems, the drones in the sky, spy planes, satellites.
Right.
People are worried about the cell phone towers, the possible redundant system in nanotechnology, in addition to this wireless EEG transduction. The evidence that I acquired through Earth Rising, the Revolution Towards 1,000 Years of Peace, a year before I was even born, my university's area was being abused, the citizens were being abused by this horrific technology. I was a student leader, and I remember sitting in this organization at the United States Student Association. It was a group of student body presidents and their senates that lobbied on federal issues. And the guy that had the organization at the time said, during Vietnam, the USSA was surveyed by the CIA. It went in one ear and out the other. I still remembered it, but I didn't take it as threat. And it was within 4 or 5 years of that I started getting the remote control torture disguised as mental illness, keeping me preoccupied with communications from Chatterbot or Chatterbox, a torturous AI software program. I hear it's no more expensive than a new iPod. It runs scripts to confuse TI. There's the angels and devils script. There's aliens that was misinformed. We got a ruse about reptilian aliens that weren't really attacking me. It was my own government, not my whole government, but corruption within. They'd had a Mormon script. The Alice in Wonderland script, as described by Robert Duncan in Project Soulcatcher, Secrets of Cyber and Cybernetic Warfare Revealed, talk about how your consciousness interacts with consciousness that is criminally insane. I have voices, all of them, regularly interacting with my consciousness that are AI, and they are narcissistic psychopaths. And I have some characteristics here derived from a textbook on what some of these kind of individuals are like. And it's both the people hired on the front end of gang stalking through the FBI that exhibit these personality disorder characteristics that would lend themselves to remote control torture work, and the actual AI is also criminally insane. Someone who is a narcissist is described as self-absorbed, expects special treatment and adulation, envious of the attention to others. Antisocial personality disorder, which is a reclassification of psychopaths or sociopaths. They're manipulative, exploitive, dishonest, disloyal, lacking guilt, habitually break social rules, childhood history of such behavior.
Okay,
and they're often
I appreciate all that, but I think a lot of people know the definitions of these things. But what I would like to say is that in asking you if you go back to the source, do you know, yes, so we could say military or these people that are involved in experimentation and they are, you know, crazy, Nazis, basically. The Nazi program coming from paperclip over to the United States, experimentation on humans didn't stop with the Nazis, okay? The Nazis didn't really lose the war, they just transformed. So if you understand it on, there's levels, right? There's a political level and there's the military level, you know, where they're actually targeting you for various reasons, maybe to keep you under, you know, control or whatever, because you're, as you say, back in the day, which is probably many, many years ago, a student activist and so on. But in order for these programs to continue, they actually have to continue to pay them. And these are individuals that are, you know, employed and controlled, you know, like rabid dogs, if you will. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is sometimes people in your position have individual or I don't know which one might call them, in other terminology, you might call them covens, okay? But they're black magic covens. They target certain individuals. They get established in a certain area around you, et cetera, et cetera. And they may or may not be involved with military and or, you know, let's say government. So just out of curiosity, do you feel that your targeting has come from a general military background in, you know, or do you think it's coming from crazed individuals that are part of covens, or how do you characterize your own experience?
In Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control by Dr. John Holland, MD, out of the state of Texas, he identified these under the second Bush administration, a public and private partnership for organized torture, where many individuals were private contractors for the CIA, private contractors for the FBI, right, private contractors for the NSA. They had their own like small business for surveying and falsifying evidence and raping people and pillaging and plundering. And it really is a public and private partnership for organized torture, but these are federal systems and an old boy system that has even less oversight than the system, how the system was designed prior, when then there was more like official CIA employees involved in this. I was a student leader. I'm exceptionally bright as a child. I tested out 1% in the nation for reading comprehension and cognitive thinking. I was talented and gifted, and I have some ancestry. I'm a descendant of 19th President Rutherford B. Hayes on my mom's side, and I kind of just stumbled into student leadership. My dad was like, if you want to go to grad school, get involved in extracurricular activity, and I chose student government at a time where our country was about to go to war. And I was identified under vague rules of the Pentagon adopted around September the 11th, according to Dr. Nick Begich's research. I was declared an adversary of the federal government and put on a terrorist watch list, and was allowed to be abused in some of the most evil ways not known to most of the public. Okay,
so you think this started around 9/11? Is that what you're saying?
I thought
you were talking about the Vietnam War, because that's quite a different situation.
No, pardon me for not making that distinction clear. The United States Student Association, when I was a part of it as a student body president at Portland State, they said during the Vietnam War, our organization was surveyed. At that point, I was already under surveillance and didn't know it. And then the abuse kicked in undeniably. In 2004, after I was off the State Board of Higher Education and in my first year of 2 years of grad school, I was able to flee the area of the Eugene Springfield area. Met up with my dad, who was running the dental school for the Ohio State University, and tried to finish my academic career, which I was able to write my paper. Those that were attacking me wanted, probably still want me dead by a suicide. They didn't want me to finish grad school and spend the rest of my life trying to figure out higher ed finance issues. Back then, the student loan system was $1 trillion, more than credit card debt in the U.S. Now, I think last I heard, it was like $1.7 trillion. One of the incentives for people to go and get involved in warfare in our military is that they'll pay for college when you get out. That and a high finance reason could have been one of the considered reasons to put me on the terrorist watch list and have me tortured and driven crazy for over 20 years.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else we haven't covered. I know we've been going for a while, and I hope this has been, audible to people. I purposely kept my video off during this sort of interaction here so that people could concentrate on you and your voice and so on. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to cover?
Yes, I want to share that John Hall, an MD and author of Guinea Pigs Technologies of Control.
I've interviewed him, yes.
Excellent. His analysis, statistical observation of normal occurrences of delusion in the human population, he was able to observe that, and then this huge spike in data of TI reporting the same types of stuff happening to one another. And he concluded that there was such a high spike out of the abnormal normal occurrence of delusion that it couldn't be just biological reasons for delusion. And I find that to be a salient argument made using statistics and a professional in the medical field. And I wish more people would understand that.
Okay, well, maybe you can explain in more depth. When you say it's not biological, what are you talking about?
Like a microwave auditory effect. It's cited in Dr. Nick Begich's books, Controlling the Human Mind.
What you're talking about, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but what you're talking about is what's coming out of the, of machinery or type of thing. In other words, that's being sent out at the individuals. The effects are biological.
The Air Force calls them controlled effects, but it can put voices in people's heads. You can see things that no other people
right.
The
normal monitor. Yeah, people are very aware of that. So, okay, so what you were trying to relate to as not being biological is obviously the weaponry that they're using.
Yeah, it's
right.
It's severe. I would love to have them out, and there was some work that was done in Michigan that they have some sensitive equipment there that weapons and direct energy weapons were addressed in a legislative way. Using that as an example, and then the stalking laws, and including drones, the California bill for the Organized Torture Act, and then working at the state government to dismantle public and private partnerships for organized torture that got put together during the second Bush administration. And that's detailed in John Hall's research about this situation.
Right. Are you familiar with Tom Bearden's work?
I don't think I am.
Okay. Maybe you should write down his name because I believe it's still on the internet. I think he may have been killed or died, but he might have been killed. And it's been a while since I've looked into him, but his name is Tom Bearden. And he's an expert on what is in essence scalar waves and electromagnetic frequencies, et cetera, et cetera. And he did work for the government for quite some time. Eventually he wrote some books on the subject, and he stopped working, I believe, for the government. And he is considered to be one of the experts out there on the whole subject matter. So I'm talking about the technology. So I would think that, you know, if you really want to understand the technology, that's a good place to go.
Thank you.
Sure. You know, have you also, I mean, I don't know, you know, what your situation, I know you're at this sort of hospital place, but have you tried situations where you get together, like, I don't know, like, you know, what comes to mind is AA meetings, but meetings with people on a regular basis that are all the same, you know, feeling similar about being targeted and having, you know, because one thing that can work is also getting together in groups. What I was explaining about Duncan O'Finian is that because when humans get together, we generate scalar waves and we can learn to direct them. You might say a coven is actually trying to do that with their coven in a negative way, but you can actually do it in a positive way. So you can not only create a frequency fence, if you will, around the group, you can also learn to direct those energies, say to disable the targets. I mean, the targeter, disable the targeter. And have you also looked into underground bases and that kind of thing where people are targeting you? I don't know if this is true, but I was actually hit by some kind of scalar weapon that created a huge problem for me many years ago. And psychics did look into it and said that it was coming from an underground base around Berkeley, California.
A deep underground military base. Well, yeah, I have read about those in the mind mapping, remote control, remote neural monitoring capabilities. From what was said by a Harvard professor captured in Robert Duncan's Project Soulcatcher book, is that there's a deep underground military base in the state of Colorado that 11 years ago had capacity for 30 million mind map TIs nationally or internationally. In the way computer science accelerates in its processing power, it could be billions by now.
Right. One way of sort of changing this paradigm is also to realize, again, the power that you and all humans have to reverse this stuff. And so that if you can look at it like, and that includes nano, and I've been talking to people about our ability to basically redirect nano either to leave your body completely or to, you know, to become benign. Because this whole COVID rollout has been a matter of putting nanographene oxide into your body and then converting the cells so that you would eventually become a transhuman individual. So it's probably operational. And we know that this graphene nano oxide, you might do some investigation here, but is also, it's very highly sensitive. And therefore, if it can take orders from an AI, it can take orders from us. So you have to understand that communication is always a two-way street. And anything somebody sends at you, you can send back, in theory, you or a group of humans. And that's one of the reasons why they wanted social distancing and they didn't want people to get together and all this kind of thing. So just starting to go down that road and understand that everything can be reversed and that this communication, you know, sort of thing that goes on between us and others, and also AIs and graphene oxide, this is all, it's new, fairly uncharted territory, but it's the beginning of us taking control of, I don't know what you want to call it, the mind waves, and sending those to administer, you know, take down facilities. This sort of superficial level is when, and I don't know if you have these abilities, but I've been able to actually take down the machines at airports, as well as lights. And, you know, this is not so unusual. I'm not in great control of it, so it's sort of, you know, a burgeoning effort, but a lot of people have these abilities and they haven't explored them. They haven't learned how to use them. et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there's a real emphasis on building up this idea that of, not saying you're doing this, but victimhood, and you know what I mean, that you're the receptacle of all this stuff, when in reality, you can actually become a sender, less of a receiver, more of a sender. And that would be reconfiguring your own self to do that. So it's a learned process. Of course, yogis know how to do this. It's all about manipulating reality, if you will. And it can also involve time travel. And for that, I would refer you to the work of Richard Bartlett. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, Matrix Energetics. He's written a few books, especially a while ago. He's had amazing experiences with this. And he's a doctor, a chiropractor, started out as that. Then he became trained as a naturopath and other disciplines. Anyway, he has transformed himself and others in certain ways by using these principles of, in essence, reconfiguring reality simply by the way you think about it, and also sending out energy from your own body to, you know, to change the world. So I would suggest that as a viable road to go down. And when somebody is highly targeted, it would mean that they have invited this into their life so that they will be forced to develop these other skills or die. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just throwing that out. Is there anything else, you know, before, because again, we've been going for a while, so I want to close this down, but, you know, have you written a book, for example?
Yeah, I've got a white paper, a 78-page victim statement, and an early attempt at understanding all of this, working with Kevin Christian, who has some wonderful YouTube videos.
I'm sorry, that broke up. You broke up. So working with who?
Kevin Christian, a Georgia targeted individual who has a wonderful group of videos on YouTube with understanding and evidence. He met the remote control torture gang that is abusing him, got to see the EEG transducer caps, the brain computer interface caps they use to pass their bodies out and transduce their consciousness to another location, to another person. It's very informative. And if you type in Tim Young Blue Oregon, you can get to a political website, and on there are two targeted individual websites. The second one is my 78-page paper, Targeted and Tortured in America, the Same Plot to Enslave Us All, by Timothy Darrell Young, BSMTA. You can have it read to you by a computerized voice. It takes about 2 hours, and then look through the PDF with the accompanying visual aids, pictures to go with the text. I look forward to updating it after reading these many books and more on the subject, and would invite people to check out Tim Young Blue Oregon for more information. I want to say one thing about getting into cosmology. I just recently read a book by Professor Brian Greene, The Hidden Reality, Parallel Universes and the Deep Laws of the Cosmos. And there has been since 1960 theories that our cosmos is inside of some kind of supercomputer. A man by the name of Conrad Zuse. Hello?
I just said sure. Yeah, I mean, this is the whole idea that this is a hologram.
That's one of the theories also. Yeah, Conrad Zuse and a digital guru Edward Fredkin, said the universe is nothing but a giant computer chugging along, executing something akin to cosmic Fortran, F-O-R-T-R-A-N. And that's page 330 of Professor Greene's book, The Hidden Realities. There is the holographic reality proposition. And Professor Greene, I find this hard to believe, but he prophesized or predicted that inside the quantum computer, possibly, or something like quantum supercomputer allows this. He predicted communications between us and the civilization or group of individuals, or what it really is, outside of the cosmos, between two of those areas across boundaries. And I found that remarkable, and I'm skeptical, but I wanted to bring that up.
Well, I understand that. And again, keeping in mind that you're here in essence, out of choice. And so that you have the ability to rework your relationship with, again, reality or realities. And that you also, if you understand the concept of the soul, and the idea that you are eternal as a soul and part of what is known as God, force, creator, all those different names. And then that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's always there. So you're changing forms, and you're also, if there's one way of looking at it, in which you're an avatar. So your avatar is not in this reality. Whether it's a game, whether it's a whatever it is, this physical body is only one. And according to the work of Ashanadine and the Guardian Races, you have 12 simultaneous incarnations at any one time. So you actually are inhabiting various realities in different bodies. And your avatar is in control of all of them. So with that in mind, you are not your body. Your body is simply a vehicle, and you had a lot to do with creating it, and manifesting it a certain way. But you can also, think of it that way. So, being lodged on this sort of 3D and locked into it, or mentally, is part of where the victim mentality comes from. If you realize that you're actually in this for a reason, and you've chosen to be here, and then you can, work with that and understand that your physical body is not the end all and be all. So that's really important. Just throwing those things out here. It's a more spiritual approach, but it goes along. You're doing it in sort of the opposite way, looking at it, computer and the hologram and all of that. That's all valid too, but it doesn't invalidate what I'm talking about in terms of the soul engagement in this game and the body's interaction with this game. So just saying those things. All right, well, thank you for being on my show, Timothy. Perhaps we can revisit this sometime in the future. Keep me posted on your progress with, everything.
I will. Thanks so much for doing what you do, involved in these hard-to-know research areas, to be able to pass on good quality info, not disinfo or misinfo. And I will be sure to keep in touch with you. For those that are still interested, just type in Tim Young, Blue Oregon, and you can get to some of my work on this area so far.
Okay, and do you have a way for people to write to you or anything like that?
Well, that's emails getting spoofed, particularly between two targeted individuals. I suspect they have an AI program.
Okay, so that's problematic at the moment.
Send me, if you want to get a hold of me, there is a physical address of where I'm at the Oregon State Hospital in Junction City. Send me a piece of mail. If you are think that you're targeted in your home, send it not from your mailbox, send it from your local post office directly. In order to communicate with me. There's been many ways that these groups deny our ability to work together. A piece of mail would be the best way to get a hold of me, and I would be happy to receive it.
All right. That's great. Okay. Thank you very much, and you take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and please do go to my website, projectcamelotportal.com. You'll find all of my recent work there. Sign up for my newsletter for free. And thanks again for being here today. Bye-bye.